Conversations with leading experts in enterprise resource planning. Evolving ERP. Powered by Insight Jam.
Welcome to the very first episode of Evolving ERP. My name is Ryan Daly, producer here for the Insight Jam, and we've got with us two of the best minds in the enterprise resource planning space, Dan Aldridge and Cheatham. So glad to have you both on the show today. I'd like to get started, get right into it. Dan, just let the people know, introduce yourself and let them know a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I've been in the ERP software market for about 25 years, dating myself, all the way back to a company called Bond, which was one of the original pioneers in the industry, all the way through Infor, through several ERP software companies that I've worked for. And I've done basically everything: consulting, sales. And now, finally, with PCG, which is my new company, I have the opportunity to be the director of solutions marketing.
Awesome. Yeah, I know that was a change you're really excited about, recent change. And wishing you all the best on that, Dan. And Kyler, please let us know a little more about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you and Dan today. My name's Cheatham. I am with the Confluential, which is a community-based driven around transparency and honesty within the enterprise tech space that helps us work together as a consultant-based or a firm-based as far as providing the best solutions to our customers. And I've been in ERP for a while now. I've spent my entire career in analytics, focused mostly on the front end and really how do you look holistically at data. I'm super passionate about technology and the opportunity it brings us to have really a healthy business and move our world forward. So I'm very excited to be here today and just kind of talk to you about what ERP looks like, or evolving ERP, if you will.
Great to hear. So when we get started, I know we were talking before the show about all the different things we could talk about. So Dan, I think you had a question you wanted to kick it off with.
Well, yeah. So first, let me say, Kyler, you are a powerful woman in tech, which I love to see. We've been needing more people like you. You're very good at marketing. You're very good at what you do. In fact, I need some tips from you as well as I get started in this capacity. But basically, I'm wondering where you got your start. I mean, you said you've been in the industry for a while, but how did your individual ERP journey begin?
For sure. And it's definitely, I think it's so interesting how everyone got to ERP, especially some of the bigger influencers in our space, because we all have a little bit of a different journey. And that's why having that collective conversation is so cool, because we get to learn from everyone how they kind of got here. Mine starts with really the pioneering of social media analytics and really looking at when you're talking to a customer or having an open conversation with a customer, how do you attach social media data to ROI? So how do we ensure that when we're acquiring or talking to that's actually going through our data work streams and bringing us to have operational excellence and the output we want as far as efficiencies? So that's really where I started in ERP. I think, one of the cool parts about my journey is I've never worked for a vendor. So I've always been able to kind of sit in my disruptor seat and, poke fun at the vendor partners, which I love, but always be able to kind of say, like, what are we actually selling here? When we look through all the marketing jargon, the messaging, what are we actually buying as far as seeing if our technology can really help our organization to create efficiencies or to make our employees and customers just have a better experience? And I know, that's kind of different than a lot of people in this space, but I think it brings this open door to creatives like me, that there's lots of opportunities within ERP, which is, traditionally more of a technical space. But kind of turning that question on you, Dan, I keep telling you, you need to write a book about all of these amazing experiences and war stories you have, because I could just listen to you for hours, but maybe give us the Cliff Notes version of your amazing career and experience in ERP.
Yeah, so I was in business for a while, and then I got an MBA. And as I was coming out of my MBA, right around 95-ish, I got a call from a recruiter. Actually, it was going through Bond, BAAN, for anybody who, it's not Bond. It's they had just won Boeing in '94. It was a Dutch company founded by Jan Baan. I've written about it quite a bit and also with Jan a lot. But it was a very interesting company, one of the pioneering companies, actually started back in '78 and was really in its stride right around that time. So I joined as a finance consultant and just had a blast. It was all manufacturing companies. I was at Carrier and Mercedes and Siemens and so many cool companies that are manufacturing companies. And I just fell in love with manufacturing and ERP right at that moment. And I basically never left. So, like I said, I worked for several partners. I worked for Infor for a while. I worked for, several partners. But just love the industry, love manufacturing. And I like to write a lot. So I've written over the years many articles on LinkedIn and blogs and things like that. So I've kind of gone the direction that you were already in, came from the social media marketing angle into ERP, and I was the opposite, right? So I was doing everything else except for marketing, and always had a great interest in it. And my interest has always been also to promote the industry and bring out the cool things. Because when I joined, it was the coolest thing going. This is 25 plus years ago, but it was the cool thing. It was the job of the day or whatever, right? It's what all the young kids wanted to do back in those days. And I really kind of want to bring back that same kind of cool factor. And I think it has it in there. It's just kind of hidden under screens and, things like that, right? It's there. And, and then there's a focus on a lot of other things like operating systems and iPads and all these kinds of integration techniques. And of course, AI. I really want to see more of the ERP systems and the interfaces that they're redesigning and everything and making it much better, and microservices and a lot of other things. So I want to get there, and I want to talk about the future.
Right.
That's why I think this evolving ERP is such a perfect venue for that.
Yeah. And I mean, like a few things to pull out of that. If you don't follow Dan and his articles on LinkedIn, highly recommend that because they're so dense because he's able to provide that experience from a career. So it's, one thing I study all the time. And kind of talking about the cool factor, if you will, which I still think ERP is very cool. Someone who still has a lot of career left and ahead of her. But what do you think, Dan, are kind of the trends or the new factors within the ERP marketplace or industry that are really going to become mainstream or maybe should become mainstream? You kind of mentioned the interfaces, but let's dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, so things like edge products that go with it, right? So manufacturing execution systems, IoT devices, automation. So robotic process automation is really fascinating, and it can do things like your whole procure to pay process, entering invoices, doing optical character recognition, and bringing in these invoices and automating those processes have a lot of promise. I won't say AI. I mean, AI is definitely part of it, but I think it's in its early stages, and some of our friends like Paul Kowitzer have predicted that AI will basically rewrite ERP systems, which I don't think it's ready for that yet.
Right.
It's a nice sensational thing to say, but I think it can definitely help in spots. And I think this microservices idea that Jan Baan has with his Vandenberg company, he's not the only one obviously out there, but he has a very powerful thing because he has some actual case studies that he can bring, like things where he's built it on top of SAP ECC, for example. So that's on premise, but with these applications built in the cloud, in his case, Google Cloud, they're accessible on a mobile device. They've got KPIs and, and things like that. So to me, that's a very exciting prospect because you could actually hold on to your on-prem more and, get something like Rimini Street and I know SAP probably hate me to say that, but Remedi Street's out there, kind of, make the on-premise available for a good bit longer, right? Extend its life and build these microservices on top. So you can kind of have your cake and eat it too, in a way.
And I think that's one of the biggest trends is really that overall ownership. This is my business's technology. This is my operations. And I have the power to choose which technology is best for me. And that's a huge evolution in our industry because a lot of times, we had these top 4 or 5 player softwares that it's kind of like, this is a software, change your processes to fit that. And now we're kind of looking at another evolution of really empowering technology to meet your own business goals. And so I think for me, that question really comes back to the basics of data. I think that is going to be one of the main things that becomes really critical, no matter if you're going to more of a modular based, some people call it composable, whatever you want to do as far as your ERP stack or what that looks like for your organization. But without the basics of data governance and data hygiene, those become obsolete. So you have to have those practices in order to do that. So I think the biggest quote unquote trend I would see is really those practices or even those competencies in-house of bringing on data focused roles to really make sure that you're maximizing outputs. And that's one thing that I would really love to see the industry kind of talk more about is just the back end practices that are needed in order to embrace these new innovations,
So the analytics is a huge thing.
Absolutely.
Data is garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
You've heard it a million times. And that's historical information, and it also weighs down your system.
100%.
In terms of putting a lot of transactions, financial transactions, what have you, through that system, it weighs it down. And the other thing it does is that it pollutes or misdirects your AI, depending on how you want to look at it. And you hear about hallucinations and all of these things. And, even just coming out, I think it was Google that had the, what was it, Gemini or whatever, and it's coming up with weird answers. And there's real problems with that, and it stems from data. And data is bad within an ERP, and it's bad without.
Exactly. That's a great point.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you're trying to meld the two, which a lot of companies would like to do, you have some that's under your direct control, and then you have some that's not. Right?
Yeah.
So, and that factors in. But your data analytics that you do is a very important piece of that. And one other thing that I wanted to bring up, and this is talking with Brian Summer last night. He's a huge analyst, one of the biggest in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
TechVentive. And he has just written a book about ESG, which is a hot topic.
Absolutely. And I think it's so cool that he wrote a book
overshadowed. It's being overshadowed by AI. And, some of the other guys, Joshua Greenbaum and, John Reed and all, they've written about how it's being overshadowed by AI, all this kind of AI hype. But you got ESG, which is a real problem. And the regulators are really kicking up, like in the US, the SEC.
Yeah.
There's all this regulatory guidance coming out, and you have to reach into your supply chain. It's not just your emissions or your forced labor or whatever in the social area, and not just your governance. It's also your suppliers and your customers. It goes on the whole value chain there, and it's extremely important. And I'm reading his book. I'm devouring his book. And he says, I'm the only analyst that's talking about this, but it's hot. He's speaking all over the world now. And, the ESG is coming into the ERPs now, but they're struggling with it. It's because you have to dip into the supply chain, and how is that connected? It's difficult to do. So I think that's a hot thing as well.
And just people
don't talk about it.
Oh, for sure. A supply chain in general, just having that overall holistic visibility. We've obviously seen in the last 5 years, a huge, massive overhaul of what is supply chain management, the diversification of vendors, the understanding how you protect your supply chain. But I think we've so many times see compliance go much further than supply chain is able to sustain. And that's one thing we have to learn how to balance as a society. although the technology might be there, the infrastructure is not. The business is not ready. So we need to understand that and create that holistic listening of where is the industry as a whole, because it's really cool to come out here and talk about these new compliance pieces or these new green technologies. That's important. But if they can't be implemented and executed effectively, then again, they become obsolete. So though those
Right.
innovations we should talk about, we need to know and talk to the supply chain experts of how do you actually activate that within a business where we don't crash an entire maritime industry, where we just don't
Yeah.
we don't have any ships to deliver anything anymore, type of thing. So I think those idea based, though they're important, it's so critical to have analysts like that come up and say, hey, let's just wave a few red flags here so that we actually calm down and look at what does this implementation look like.
Yeah, and what he's saying in the book already, I'm seeing, is that he's saying you've got two things. You've got regulatory compliance, which is important. Right now, what they say is our emissions are for this year were whatever. I use this much natural gas, whatever. But it's all a summary accounting type measurement that's static every year. He said what we really need is basically real-time monitoring of, and we need to get down to a level of detail of which product line that you make has the biggest carbon footprint. That's a very interesting thing.
Oh,
because
sure.
it could be that you've been making this certain product line and for years, just because that's the mix that you had. And then you find out, well, that's 50% of your carbon footprint. Eliminate that product line, right? But you need data to measure that. You need systems. And he was even telling me some systems, and it's in his book, some systems that you could acquire, and also ERP system capabilities like Green Ledger and SAP and different capabilities that are there that are developing, and they need to develop fast because all this European regulation, and this happens all the time. European regulation, they do something like that. They do ISO or whatever, and then before you know it, it's over here. IFRS is in Europe. Now it's over here instead of GAAP, for instance. I think it's coming, and he's saying you better get out in front of this and make a change in your organization to do better, to be more responsible.
Yeah.
I think it's a very interesting topic, so I want to get him on here too.
Yeah, absolutely. He would be a great guest. And just the overall conversation of ethics around types of emerging technologies is a huge piece to have, a bigger conversation around, which is, definitely something that is evolving in ERP is, how do you ensure that you have the ethics around these systems that are autonomous, and making sure that you are, eventually getting within those compliance regulations.
Want more Insight Jam? Follow us on Instagram for exclusive content like a daily dose of best practices and buying advice from industry experts and leading solution providers. Or subscribe to our YouTube channel for long-form highlights from our expert panel discussions. And if you prefer to listen, please rate and review the Insight Jam podcast on Apple, Spotify, or Google. The Solutions Review team is hard at work collecting the best enterprise technology information from around the globe, so don't miss out. Now, let's get back to the show.
So I got a question for you.
Ooh.
In your opinion, what's the prevailing opinion on ERP today? And have new technologies and trends, for example, AI, our friend, help the marketplace adapt, or is it lagging behind?
Yeah. Well, I think we've been trying to rename ERP, which for those of you that don't know, stand for Enterprise Resource Planning. We've been trying to rename that for like 10 years now. And then we talk about if it's dead, if it resurfaces, it's been a term that's around that doesn't really match what it is. So Enterprise Resource Planning, we think about digital operations, we think about organizational change management, all these subcategories around what is ERP and how do you effectively utilize it while having these kind of perceptions or representations in the marketplace around things like the Terminator, right? We've both written and lectured on the Terminator.
Yeah, I was going to say, I got one for you with an animated GIF of him firing away.
Yeah. I was actually talking at a Women in Tech Summit, and they all let me know that only old people know the Terminator. So that's not, a good line of conversation.
That's not the case.
So it's something that is a representation of what does it look like to have a perception in the marketplace that you have to overcome that's so wrapped in fear. And that's the biggest piece that we have to overcome is when, a fancy CEO in a sports coat and cool shoes goes on stage with all this hype music and is like, "Hey, we're implementing AI." And he thinks to his organization, everyone's going to be excited, and to them that perception means I'm going to lose my job.
Lose my job.
So we have to get over that. And that's a big uphill climb to be able to understand how do you effectively and transparently communicate this technology that is not mainstream, that everyone doesn't understand yet. And that's kind of where we are at this catalyst of, this time to be alive, right? In technology and enterprise technology. That needs to be part of your roadmap and your competitive advantage. Yes. But you also need to have those assessments and that data behind, is your organization ready for such things? What is their perception? Will it be successful? And if you don't understand that and you kind of just go full charge at the innovation around ERP or whatever, new technology you're trying to implement and don't understand the people side, then it's just simply not going to be successful because it is, now the spine of the organization. It's not siloed to an IT department. The modern IT department is the entire business at this point because technology touches every facet of that. So I think the prevailing opinion, to answer your question, of ERP is not really a positive one, but we have the option when we talk about these types of shows or when we have this conversation in the marketplace to really understand and transparently say, what is ERP? What is operations? And as business leaders, what is your role in that, employee A, B, and C? And that's really where we're going from an enterprise standpoint. And then also I'll just add, and you know a lot about this, Dan, too, the vendor side of explaining, what is ERP and offering those different marketplace saturation pieces around the now competitive nature of ERP. Now you can go with a 2-tier ERP. You could go with, with tier 3, while giving some modules around what is a best practice or a best application for your industry or your specific competencies. So I think that's one thing that ERP is becoming such a more diverse marketplace, which I think is a healthy move for the business to have those options as customers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the perception is it's very stodgy.
Mm-hmm.
It's what your father did. It's got the same. It sort of has the same track as manufacturing.
Yeah.
And,
Good
a
point.
big part of ERP is manufacturing ERP.
Mm-hmm.
So those kind of perceptions of monolithic, huge, impenetrable, unteachable, all of these things, not cool.
Not cool.
And interfaces and things like that, they go back, 20 years really,
Mm-hmm.
because you can easily have a manufacturer that has a 20-year-old system.
Absolutely.
Right? So what do they know? A young person, a millennial, whatever comes
Mhm.
into, you're a millennial. So
I am
there you go.
proud of it.
So
No, I don't.
I'm proud of it. Right. I'm probably a baby boomer, but but anyway, coming in, they see those screens and they go, "Oh my God, I don't want to
Mhm.
touch that thing.
Mhm.
Give me something like Java coding or writing Python or something
Right.
like that." Right. That's what I want to do all day. I don't want to touch that thing. But and some things like Fiori or whatever, or a new UI, UX in Infor or a NetSuite or whatever helps, right? It helps to engage the user. But I think building mobile applications and showing them it can be consumed on a tablet or something like that is a huge thing for the millennials and the new users of a system. So they need to change that perception. And in the
100%.
meantime, it just got to change it over. I mean, if you upgrade it to the cloud, that doesn't solve all the problems, but at least it gives you a modern interface run in a modern platform that you can add to, that you can integrate with, and consume data from. So I think that that's part of the changing of it. And it's inevitably going to be tied to AI and how it works within there as the younger users get more attuned to that, and take out the fear, because if it's an RPA or something that really helps without causing you to lose your job, but I would argue that if you're entering purchase orders all day, you're not really that thrilled with your job anyway.
Yeah. Well,
So it's going to
and
change.
absolutely. And doing and evolving those jobs. And I think it's interesting that you talk about like Gen X and millennial workforce that is more tech savvy. Well, the value in other areas of the workforce and upskilling those employees around new technologies is just as valuable. So, it's a huge transformation for the business in general. But, Dan, I'm dying to ask you, because if you guys haven't
Okay.
read Dan's article on ERP is Dead, run, do not walk, run to LinkedIn and read that, because it's such a great piece. But so we've
Maybe
had
we'll
this
link to it, right, Ryan? You can link
Absolutely.
to it in
Yeah. Check the
yeah,
show
there you
notes.
go. So looking at this concept of ERP is dead, I was telling you, I was talking to Jan Bond earlier this week. He knew that in 1998. We're all
Yes.
figuring that out at this point. But where do you think that idea started? And do you think that ERP can endure this idea of ERP is dead?
Yeah, it started way back almost then. I started seeing articles, it's dead, it's, or whatever. But I think most of the things that when I did my research, I have, 6 or 7 articles in there that I reference that talk about ERP is dead, this, dying, whatever. And when I looked them up, I could see some of them had some really early dates on them, right?
Yeah.
So 2010, 2016,
Yeah.
or whatever. And I think they mostly focused on the fact that things like human capital management, CRM, all of those things were separate things.
Mhm.
And ERP was thought of the back office core,
Right.
thing you didn't want to touch. Whatever, salesperson's not going to go in and enter
No.
opportunity, and no way. They're going to put it in Salesforce or whatever. I think it was a change. They were trying to say that ERP as a concept was very limiting because it didn't have the HCM and the CRM. And I think that that's changed a lot.
Yeah. Mhm.
Right. So those things, if they aren't in the functionality of the ERP itself, most of
Right.
them are. If they're extra things, then you can use an API connection, a standard connector or connector to Salesforce or whatever, if you want to enter your opportunities in Salesforce and transfer an order over to your ERP. Fine. There's already a standard connector to that. So it's no longer limiting in that way. And some of the early ones that I saw, like Ted Rome's tech post, which I love, it had that little graveyard and the little R3 on it and stuff like that. It was awesome.
I love
so
that
I picked
cartoon.
that.
Yeah,
I
that's
put
funny.
that into my post. But he said it should be enterprise resource platform.
Uh-huh.
So it's changing, that it's a platform you can add stuff on and all that with APIs. And I said, I love the article, but it was mainly focused on ERP is dead because the term ERP is
Exactly.
dead, not
Yeah.
because ERP as a system is dead.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not. As a matter of fact, it's expanding like crazy. So that was kind of my contention in there. I said, ERP is dead, and I use my young Frankenstein thing because I like to do my things with movies and all. But I said that it's actually what's dying is on premise, but it still has a life. So
Oh yeah.
it's like the what is it, Holy Grail, when he goes,
Yeah.
I'm not dead yet, right? It's the on-prem system still lives.
Yeah.
And it's actually running the whole business. It's running the whole business, so it's not
Absolutely.
going away anytime soon, right? What's the forcing the issue and making the industry kind of a chaos now is this forced move to cloud,
Absolutely.
right? Because the vendors like SAP love SAP to death, but haven't made the case, right? They haven't made a strong business case to move. They basically said, you got till end of 2027 to move, or you lose your maintenance, right? Or,
Absolutely.
go off support. And that's, I get it, right? they have control of everything. They have control of the data and so
Right.
on. So they want to force it. It's good for the profit of the company and
Yeah.
everything. But the customers are saying, wait a minute, it costs, $200 million or whatever it costs
Up
to
100%.
get to where we
Yeah.
are. And we've
Yeah.
been here 20 years and we like what we have. And that's what
Yeah.
I said in my blog. I said, these people like their old monster,
It's their monster.
it's
Okay.
their
Yeah.
monster,
Yeah.
right? It's customized the way they want it, right?
Yeah.
And to tell them they have to go to the cloud and they have to, either get rid of customizations or go to that standard business model, use Rise, whatever the program is to upgrade you to the cloud.
Mhm.
That's asking a lot, and it's still expensive to
Mhm.
make that
Oh, yeah.
move. And it's not really, that's what they're struggling with, I think, right now. So
Yeah.
that's another perception in the market is these ERP vendors and also the systems integrators, the big four or whatever that
Mhm.
support them are, putting pressure on them to make a move that they don't want to make and they
Yes.
don't want to pay for it,
Mhm.
you know?
And nor should they have to be totally honest, if they don't want to. And I think the term ERP is dead is a big marketing term that have been put into the marketplace around a lot of these vendors trying to pull maintenance or sunset their system. I mean, we in the SAP world, you mentioned we have this crazed runaround of dates of 2025, 2027, 2030.
Yep. Yep.
Nobody really knows what any of that means unless you have a transformation coach that is really helping you through that and you have a roadmap. But a lot of times we see this push to what makes the powers that be more money and what that looks like, what products they want you to utilize. And I think the thing is sometimes that pressure is good pressure for you to utilize to be more innovative and healthy as a business. But you have to remember that this is your decision and there's many different areas or avenues to maintaining that support outside of vendor support. So that doesn't always have to be a pressure scenario, but we see this ERP is dead as businesses need to go out, spend all of this money, select a new software, or even look at words like upgrade, where you have an incumbent vendor that's like, oh, we're just upgrading you to the cloud. It's
Yeah.
like that is a whole new implementation. And you have to understand things like total cost of ownership. What is this actually going to look like for your business moving forward? It is not simply a plug and play upgrade. Where you flip a switch and all of a sudden you're in the cloud, you're lost in the cloud somewhere, right? It's a whole different ball game. So I think the thing that you have to do as consumers and just be educated or reach out to someone that is in the industry. And I think the beautiful thing about our industry is there are always willing participants to have that conversation with you, to get to know your business, get to know your goals, because it truly is your enterprise. If we really dissect enterprise, it's your business. So you have to decide what is the best decision for you, not all the marketing terms that have, millions and millions of dollars behind them in the marketplace, pressuring you to make a decision that might not be right for you.
Absolutely. Yes. All right. Well, did I think you had a question to ask me down
Do I
there?
in- Yes,
Oh,
I do.
no, I
No,
was
this
going
is
to
your
ask
question,
you.
Dan. Come on.
What am I doing? Oh, my goodness. All right. So I'm going to ask you,
Okay.
what is one thing you wish more people understood about ERP? And similarly, what is one thing you think the ERP marketplace can do to better represent itself to enterprise organizations? Very good question.
Yeah, it is a great question. And the thing that I wish people understood about ERP is you don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to code software. You don't have to have these very, very technical skill sets, though they are still incredibly important. But there are areas in which you can still engage in a very technical industry while being things like a communicator or a project manager or facilitate all of these different roles. I think in ERP, it has this perception of you have to have a certain title, a certain degree, a computer science heavy technical degree to be part of that. When really, actually, some of the biggest demand in our workforce is those communicators, because we have seen that evolution of it going outside just an IT project, right, to a whole business project. And that's why we try to use the term business transformation with our clients and community, so they truly understand this is actually going to affect every facet of the business. So I think I wish more people, and that's why, I'm super passionate about going to universities or to our women in tech conferences to bring more diversity to ERP so that we have more innovation and ideas, so that we have the ability to really showcase this is a very exciting career to have. As much as people think that it's boring, it's actually not. I don't know any industry that has better problem solvers, that has people that are able to act on their feet, for people that actually offer customer service effectively, it other than the ERP industry. I've learned more in this industry than I've ever learned in any other industry that I've worked in, because of the overall integration across the business. We do things from finance to manufacturing to supply chain to human resources. You get to go into each different area and learn about a variety of different industries, whether it's food and beverage, automotive, you name it. There's an ERP system for it. So, I highly encourage, especially younger workforce, to really get involved in understanding what is ERP and how can you have a technology workforce background, because that's certainly not going away. When it comes to how can the ERP marketplace do better, I think everyone knows what I'm going to say in answering that question. Just be honest. Sell what you're going to sell. Don't utilize or manipulate clients into buying something because you have a quota. Make sure that you're matching the technology with the customer so that you can have a successful case study going forward, and you're not involved in this high profile failure. And I think that is a piece of all of these vendors have great solutions for the right customer. So instead of fighting over, two different customers, have the opportunity to really explain the value of your system, not to do things like tricky deadlines or, silly language in contracts that lock them into these different areas. I had, a client one time that had a custom integration that literally could not fire their SI because the SI owned that custom integration. We have these ways in the industry of not being honest with one another. And I believe that we can potentially change that by showcasing that there's many pieces of technology that add value to organizations. If we're just honest how they function together, then we can have an industry that's actually built on innovation instead of a lack of integrity.
Solutions Review is inviting you to join InsightJam.com. What started a few years ago as a social media event to celebrate enterprise technology has now grown into an always-on tech community with live events, discussions, videos, vendor showcases, and industry resources. Our vetted roster of experts, thought leaders, and analysts are sharing tips and tricks daily. So if you're interested in getting involved, join the long list of companies and brands who have already participated by visiting InsightJam.com today. Now back to the show.
I would say that young people can take a path of learning about ERP software as a bridge to learning about business. And you can be very functional in nature. I mean, for the first 15 years of my career, I was a finance consultant. Everybody has finance, okay? And everybody runs an ERP system for their finance. It's just the way it is. So you always have a job. That's what my boss used to say. He said, some people have manufacturing, some people have distribution, but they all have finance. So if you can learn finance, you learn accounting along the way. I even learned and got to be very interested in cost accounting, if you can believe it. Cost accounting, I never got, even with my MBA. I never took it.
Interesting.
I took management accounting, which had a little bit of that in it. But I learned cost accounting from being down on the shop floor, learning about, labor time and material costs and variances, purchase price variances, all these things, these concepts I learned because I knew how to run an ERP system.
I love that.
And it's a wonderful lesson for anybody. You got a job. All these people say it's dead. They're using an ERP system and they got 500 people, 500 users sitting there right there entering orders, right? So you have a job. You have a job. And if you're in manufacturing, you get exposed to all the new stuff like smart manufacturing, like we have a smart factory.
That's so
here
cool.
at PCG.
You'll have to do a tour for us one time. Like, take us on a tour on one of the podcasts.
The Smart Factory?
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
Fun stuff. I mean, you get to learn about manufacturing techniques, all the measurement that they do, all the reporting, all the KPIs, the efficiency of the plant. I mean, it's fascinating stuff to me. I'm a geek, but it's fascinating stuff to me. And I learned because I was an ERP software consultant.
Absolutely. And I think that's the biggest piece about that is this community and this industry, all they want to do is kind of train the next generation. And that's something that I am truly grateful for in my position, is the ability to have this generation of wanting you to understand how technology and how ERP can really influence your overall business for the better. There's good work to be done, and there's work for everyone to be done, to your point. And that's something that I think that we as an industry kind of need to push towards opening the door to, and kind of lifting the veil to understanding that. And I'm sure that's, what this show is about here, is really kind of bringing that to the forefront of the diversity of people that can see the opportunity of ERP.
Absolutely. That is our plan. We want to have lots of different ERP voices. I think it's an underserved group out there. Like you said, it's not, people don't think of it as the cool thing, but I'll say, I love video and audio production. I don't plan on leaving it, but your passion for ERP, it's got me thinking a little bit. Not tomorrow, but maybe down the line. I don't know. Or maybe there's some crossover there, something to think about. I did want to ask both of you, we've got a question from our Insight Jam community. And I was curious as to your opinion on this, and if you had any advice. How do you balance the need for innovation? So you talked about AI and things like that. I'm sure that would come up, with the need for stability and reliability in ERP systems. Something that you need to have.
Well, I mean, I can take a whack at that first. I think innovation is always something that you need to have on the roadmap, but innovation is a word like digital transformation. Like, what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. It means the fact that you need to have, what does that mean for your company, defined. You are never going to be able to leverage the benefit of an innovation if you do not have healthy business processes. If your business processes aren't effective, if they aren't standardized across the organization, you might as well go up to the roof and throw your money off of it, because then you're not going to get any sort of output that you need to be able to get from these new technologies. And that was kind of like going back to our first conversation around data. Go back before you look at these innovations and do an audit of your processes. Bring in an expert to audit that. Make sure that's efficient, the engine is efficient before you paint the car, right? So that's something that I think is a huge piece that people really miss, of, I'm ready for AI, my company's ready to be on the forefront of this. It's like, no, you're absolutely not ready for that, because you don't have those basic business practices in place, and you're not maintaining the health of those practices and processes over a certain time. So that would be my answer to that question. But what about you, Dan?
I'd say, got to take care of the stability first, right? Before you get to the innovation, whatever that means, to your point. I think it is using some of the fancy new bells and whistles that are coming out, and AI, I count AI as one of those, by the way, is that, yes, get the processes right. I mean, I used to say that the most popular ERP system in the world is QuickBooks and spreadsheets, because people are running on that. You would be surprised, even shocked at people running. I mean, multi-million-dollar companies, tens of million-dollar companies sometimes are running on QuickBooks and spreadsheets. Absolutely. And you say to yourself, how is this possible? How could they get along without an ERP system? And the answer is they do it painfully, and they do it manually, but they ship product. They ship product with their QuickBooks and spreadsheets. So they have stabilized their process, I guess is my point. And when you look at a tool, if you take a new version of an ERP system, enter brand, it really doesn't matter. You're going to get value out of it. Now you want to, in my opinion, pick the best one for your vertical industry. I think that's quite important because you've got functionality for automotive or A&D or whatever your industry might be, and that's important. It'll do a better job probably, but any of them will do the job.
Yeah.
Right. But you want to be stable. And then you say, I've got these processes in place for X number of months and I'm running smoothly. I'm not having a lot of bugs. My users are comfortable. And then let's bring in some AI and some RPA, because even like Elon Musk, I was just looking at a video with it. He said you want to automate as step 5. He said you want to get the processes right. You want to delete the ones that aren't right. You want to, and then you want to automate as the very last step, right? Because he'd gone in reverse. He said, I started with automation and thinking that that's the best thing to do.
Yeah.
But you automate, it's like doing a crappy process faster.
Absolutely.
That's what automation will do for you if you don't have your process right. So anyway, that's probably longer than I
No, I think that's perfect. A crappy process faster. And I think that's a big reason why ERP gets a bad rap, because you have these businesses that are looking to vendors to fix their broken processes. That's not the point of a technology, right? The technology is an efficiency tool, but unless you have the foundation and structure of effective processes within your business, the ERP system is going to do nothing for you but create that technical debt, where it's going to sit there unused because you have all of these spreadsheet workarounds or manual workarounds, because that's not been a practice that you've ever had within your culture before. And so that's something that you certainly have to create those processes and those standard innovations or standard processes before you look at innovation.
So I should not strap the proverbial jet engine to my rusted out Volkswagen is what you're saying?
Yeah, you absolutely can. And be sure to take a video so that we can be internet famous in that.
Okay, yes, I'll be sure to tag you in that as soon as I get my jet engine money. All right. Well, Dan and Kyla, thank you so much for being on the inaugural episode here of Evolving ERP. I don't know about you out there, but I had a wonderful time listening to the two of you break things down. Your passion for the subject and your insights are just a joy to listen to.
Thank you, Ms. Kyler.
Oh, thank you, Dan. Yeah. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. And we had that question from our Insight Jam community. If you have a question out there, or if you are watching this and are an experienced ERP professional, get on insightjam.com. Let us know. Reach out. And we could see about having you on or featuring one of your questions on the show. For now, Kyler, where can people get in touch with you? What should they know about?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, I love to hear from our community. It's one of my favorite things to do. So find me on LinkedIn at Kyler Cheatham. I also host 2 podcasts. One is a short form podcast, which is called Bite Size. It's digital transformation in 10 minutes or less, where we really break down very complex topics. And then we have a long form podcast called Enterprise Tech Talks that I host with one of our colleagues, Judith O'Callahan. And she and I kind of have guests on there. Our first episode is launching this summer, in summer of 2024, with John Bond on there as well, and kind of break down what that looks like. So definitely hit me up there. I'd love to hear kind of your feedback on this episode. It is the first one, and we will definitely see you to have those conversations moving forward.
Awesome. Please check that out.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry.
Dan is extremely popular. He's just getting blown up, right?
Sorry.
Yeah.
So,
Ryan,
Dan,
let us know where we can find you.
Don't call me. I'm at pcgservices.com is my website or my company website. And I also have a little site called erpdoctors.com. Where there's videos and things like that. I had the old podcast, which was called ERP Doctors, if anybody wants to check that out. There's only like 8 episodes, but they're out there. And I guess that's it, or just hit me on LinkedIn, DM me.
And we'll have all those links in the show notes there. So if you want to check it out, just see below. So we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with more luminaries from the ERP world. And in future episodes, I know that we'll have Dan and we'll have Kyler back. It was great talking with both of you and listening. Like I said, check out InsideJam.com if you want to get in touch with us. And we'll see you again for the next Evolving ERP.